afternoon, everyone. This is your host, Rishi Agrawal, co-founder and CEO at TeamLease Regtech, with yet another episode where we bring the experts of compliance in India and have them talk about their experiences, the challenges, the opportunities, the best practices, and so on and so forth. Today, I'm really excited to bring yet another battery of very senior professionals from the compliance industry. Let me take a minute and introduce them. I have with me Mr. Anil Arya. Anil comes with over 20 years of experience across the alcohol beverage giants. Anil has headed finance, acquisitions, distribution, among other leadership positions. He spent over 15 years with AB InBev, Saab, and is currently with Bira 91 as the CFO and SVP Finance. Anil has successfully carved out uncertainties amongst precarious regulatory dimensions. Anil brings an MBA from Indira Gandhi Open University, loves to read, sing, and listen to his motivational songs. Welcome, Anil.
Thank you very much, Rishi.
We also have Mr. Nitesh Patwari with us. Nitesh is a CA and CS by profession and a photographer by passion. So Nitesh, you and I need to connect on photography as well. So Nitesh has completed his PGDM from IMT Ghaziabad in 21. He's currently the Senior Director of Finance at Bombay Shaving Company. Nitesh brings a lot of wide exposure in the fields of treasury, strategy, business development, legal and taxation, CSR, IT, and HR management. As you can see, Nitesh brings a very diverse and deep experience managing various roles where he has had direct, indirect leadership position for compliance management. Nitesh also cuts across multiple industries: FMCG, healthcare, steel, retail, and commodities. He's a photographer by passion and carries the same creative innovation at the workplace. Welcome, Nitesh.
Thank you, Rishi.
And our last participant on the panel is Rajiv Pandya. He's currently the Group Head Secretarial and a key management personnel of the Vishakha Group. He's an empathetic leader and has grown in the field of compliance, audit, and corporate governance. With over 10 years of experience as a compliance officer of corporates across multiple industrial sectors. Rajiv graduated from Bhavnagar University, completed his LLB from Gujarat University, and he also completed his company secretaryship from the Institute of Communication in New Delhi. Welcome, Rajiv.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you.
So today, the interesting thing is we have three speakers from three different walks of life. We have Anil Arya ji from alcohol beverage, third largest alcoholic beverage market in the world. India is the third largest. Imagine how many happy people are there having alcohol every day. Market is growing at the rate of 6.5% to 7%. It's expected to grow at around 7% for the next 3 years. 400 million people are going to consume what Anil ji's company and the other market leaders produce in this decade. So imagine the kind of market opportunity that he deals with. And he will also talk about the corresponding complexity of compliance when he speaks. So that's one participant. We also have FMCG represented by Nitesh, fourth largest sector of Indian economy with over $100 billion in market size, growing at 16% a year. Imagine the kind of tumultuous growth this sector has seen and the geographical spread and opportunity that exists. And we also have, Rajiv from plastics, $73 billion market size, 17 million tons of annual production capacity, and expected to grow around 10% in terms of volume and 8% in terms of market size. So imagine the kind of experience the three gentlemen today bring to our forum. So with that, let me open up today's dialogue. I'll take a minute or two, lay the problem on the table, which is how do we deal with this level of complexity of India's regulatory environment? 1,536 acts, 69,233 unique compliances with about 6,618 filings across the law of the land. 7 categories, labor being the largest, 30% in terms of acts, 27% in terms of compliance, and guess what? A whopping 68% in terms of criminality. That's labor laws. So anybody who deals with multi-entity, multi-locational, multi-state, multi-business type kind of an organization will deal with the complexity of labor laws, and it's non-trivial. EHS is Environment, Health and Safety, deals with Environment Protection Act of 1986. All of the other rules, solid waste management, e-waste management, hazardous waste management, disposable of biomedical waste, batteries rules, air, water, sound pollution, all of those are there. Finance and taxation needs no introduction. Direct tax introduction and direct tax, indirect tax, customs, FEMA, advanced tax, income tax, GST, and many others fall there. Commercial deals with equipments, hoists, lifts, cranes, pressure vessels, legal metrology, weights and measures, fire extinguishers, Electricity Act, name it, they're all sitting there. Secretarial deals with company law, SEBI law, pretty much event-based compliances, they're all there. And industry specific is sectoral, TRI for telecom, FSSAI for food, IRDAI for insurance, RBI for banking, shadow banking, and so on and so forth. Let's quickly take a look at our infographic, which talks about the regulatory burden in different states, color-coded. Don't intend to go through it. A lot of this data is available just in case any one of you is interested. Let's move on from here to the next slide. Just to make sure all of us are on the same page with compliances, these are some illustrations of statutory compliances. You may have heard of licenses, registrations, permissions, various kinds of consent orders, returns, registers, challans, payments, remittances, renewals, notices, exemptions, committees. All of these are examples of compliances. No need to mention this. 3 levels of compliance: central, state, and local. 7 categories we went through, and 3 types, which is time-based, event-based, and checklisting. Last slide here, and we move on. Let's go back. Rishi, please. Okay, so we saw how complex regulatory environment in India is. Hope is not a strategy. If you want to stay on the right side of the law, A, you need to know the law. B, you need to know what needs to be done for the law. And C, you need to have a mechanism, a process-oriented mechanism to make sure that you know if things are going well or things are going downhill. So with that said, let me first call upon Rajiv Pandya. Unfortunately, Rajiv has to leave around 3:25. So Rajiv will not be able to stay with us through the course of this discussion today. So I would want to bring Rajiv into conversation first so that we can hear from him. Rajiv, you've seen this complexity, you've experienced this complexity over the last many, many years, and you've been working in this industry for a long time. Please share your experience around challenges and complexity of compliance management in India.
Thank you, Mr. Rishi. See, I have witnessed Companies Act 1956 as well and 2013 as well. So for me, compliance is a very tedious job, I think, as a company secretary. And a company secretary always comes, if you see, company secretary and compliance officer. So there is a compliance word is also there. So company secretary is also synonym of compliance, and that comes corporate governance. So with the introduction of new Companies Act in 2013, we have witnessed that lots of changes were there, and it is expected that new Companies Act also going to be introduced within few years to keep pace with the economic development we have right now. So company secretary is also can be said that it's a paperwork. So we have to manage paper for board meeting as well. We have to prepare returns. We have to ensure that the board meetings and board process are very well recorded as per the chairman, as per the recommendation of our chairman. So for me, compliance nowadays is a very tedious job, and as we are growing from multifold from 0 to 10 to 15, compliance is also gone under change. So we expect labor reforms are there. New Companies Act are also going to be introduced very soon in form of amendments. New CSR norms are there. A separate regime is there. Earlier it was comply or expend. Now it is that comply or face the penalty. So government is very active. The current government is very active. They have I think learn to say that we have to keep pace with the economic developments, have to ensure that redundant laws are reduced to up to a certain level. For me, as a company secretary of Vishakha group of companies, lots of group compliances are there, associate companies are there, intercompany transaction are there, and compliance, for me, compliance is very a complex task. So for me, if it is carried out through digital transformation, then this can be can be shortened to a some extent. So over you, Rishi.
Well, thank you so much, Rajiv. Really appreciate that. Anilji, let me bring you into the picture. You come from the alcohol beverage space. There are many customers of ours in that space, and we understand that that space brings tremendous complexity of compliance management. What are your views on the subject?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Rishi. I mean, I can be very evident and clear on the alcohol space in India specifically, where I could see that we are available in 30 markets and roughly 70,000 stores. So the complexities of each of the state is quite demanding because it is very easy to be available with your brand in a particular outlet for a consumer. But the complexities and the enactments which are making our business and product available are really a tough challenge for any of the organization to bring those stock back into the market. Now, the biggest problem which I find in regulatory environment and the compliances challenges is that while there are 1,500 acts and the more than 6,000 filings, however, the reputation of the organization which goes away with few of the non-compliances make you into a dry market. For example, while India has given us gift of Gujarat and Mizoram as a dry state, and Bihar also very recently, but I could very clearly say that when there's a zero liquid discharge in a plant, which is a mandatory requirement from a Pollution Act point of view, or there's a very clear mandate of putting up a shop and establishment registration for your headquarters or office or registered office, where you're setting up a business or a place of business, or when you look at your permission to get a boiler license in a plant based on the tonnage capacity of a particular setup of capacity, or when we look at our compliances in terms of Minimum Wages Act, which are under labor laws, those enactments failing which impact the entire reputation of an organization, right? And that reputational loss is much phenomenal or multiplying effect than the revenue of the organization itself. And I could see very clearly that if I give an evidence of the problem statement, I was working for one of the plant in Coca-Cola. And in that plant, there was a slight non-compliance which happened for wages. And a CEO and a CFO had to be in the room for almost 2 nights to resolve that issue, right? And that issue was a very basic one to give overtime at double the rate. And the moment we skipped accounting that properly or complying with that, it was very clear that the Labor Act had to be enacted and they had to really get out the people and the senior leadership team to put them into the room to resolve the issue. And the reputation of Coca-Cola business also got impacted severely in those days. So complexities are many. I understand that we are not really tracking it because the secretary and the legal department become more accountable in an organization to take care of all the legalities and compliances. However, these are not really functionalized or put into the bloodstream of each of the functions to comply. So the problem statement is that people are not really conscious entire organization, and we believe that if the legal department or secretarial department exists in the organization, they're responsible to ensure that all those enactments and filings and compliances are done and executed by the department. So obviously that needs a lot of education, information flow, and very clear cohesiveness within the department, which is on a fundamental basis is missing across all the businesses where I work, whether it is Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble or S.A.B. Miller or AB InBev. And that is fundamentally missing because while we are trying to bring compliances into shape in the last couple of decades, our centralized way of believing that the legal and secretarial department is the only responsible and accountable function to look into these factors is something which is a miss, and that need to improve. Over to Rishi.
Absolutely, very well said. And the issues, just to compound the problem further, Anilji, a company of these sizes typically leans heavily on contract labor and various vendor partners for managing its human supply chain, human capital management, and so on. And as a principle, there is a fairly large chunk of compliance accountability of the misses that your contractors have on their compliance as well. So while as a company we are responsible for our own compliances, we also have to make sure that the contractor compliances are taken care of as well.
Absolutely.
So let me bring Nitesh. Nitesh, you come from FMCG, very wide range of experience, company executive, compliance officer, finance officer, M&A, business development. You've worn many hats. I'm sure you've seen a lot more dimensions of a business. Why don't you tell us a little more about it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, actually, see, I started my career post my CACS. I started my career with Imami Group, spent around 7 long years in Imami, where I've been into different verticals of the Imami, from healthcare division like hospital to retail sector like medicine shop to FMCG sector like the main cosmetic company, right? So what has been seen here in the initial days, even we don't used to take compliance as a very serious matter. Yeah. To be very honest, let us be very honest. In the table, क्या होता है ना? Compliance comes as a third or second object for all of us. First object is always the other matter, though we are a, and being a CS company को ये expectation रहता था कि Nitesh will take care of the compliances as well. But yeah, to be very honest, my priorities, if we talk about the priorities, my in the compliances comes always on the third or fourth or seventh or eighth list in terms of priorities in the initial days of mine, right? So those were the area when we have started seeing the compliances, ये तो हो जाएगा, manage कर लेंगे. So we have a very typical mindset as far as Indians are concerned. Basically, आज से 4 साल 7 साल पहले की बात करूं तो टिपिकल माइंडसेट वही हुआ करता था कि वी विल मैनेज दिस, राइट? कैसे भी कर लेंगे, विद द प्रोमोटर बेस्ड कंपनी वहां पे भी कभी भी कर लेते हैं, अपने मैनेज कर लेंगे. सो दैट मैनेज वर्ड itself gives you a lot of discomfort when we talk about compliances, right? But over the period, in this period of around 5-6 years, we have seen this evolving, compliances being evolved into the blood of all the organizations, right? Compliance, if you don't comply things, what will be the impact? If you comply things, what will be the impact, right? In terms of, like, for FMCG company, are we following all the parameters of legal metrology act or not? So to give you a basic example, legal metrology में ऐसा आता है कि MRP has to be shown in the product. आप जब e-commerce website डालो, कहीं पे भी अगर आप अपना product दिखा रहे हो as a showcase, MRP दिखना चाहिए. अगर MRP नहीं दिखता तो वो itself is become a non-compliance for you. These are very small tricky things, right? Most of the people doesn't recall those things. वो अचानक आपको एक आ जाता है, चिट्ठी आ जाता है, बोलते हैं लव लेटर बोलते हैं अपने, तो वो आ जाता है अपने को डिपार्टमेंट से. So those are the things here. For in case of FMCG company, we do a lot of advertisements, right? So advertisements, you need to take care that ASCII standards are being met or not. वरना वहां से एक चिट्ठी आ जाएगा कि यार आपका एडवर्टाइजिंग स्टैंडर्ड काउंसिल ऑफ इंडिया के हिसाब से ये नहीं हो सकता. टू गिव यू एन एग्जांपल ऑफ इमामी आल्सो, वी यूज्ड टू गेट, हम लोग ना फेयर एंड हैंडसम को नंबर 1 फेयर एंड हैंडसम करके करते थे. तो सर वी गॉट अ लेटर दैट यू कैन नॉट कॉल इट एज अ नंबर 1 सो दैट यू आर अ नंबर 1. एंड देन उसमें हम लोग को एक लेटर ये आ गया था, किसी कंज्यूमर ने क्लेम कर लिया था कि फेयर एंड हैंडसम में वी यूज्ड टू क्लेम दैट यू विल बिकम मोर फेयर, राइट? तो अब उसमें ये आ गया था, मैं तो गोरा ही नहीं हुआ, मेरे को तो कंपेंसेशन दे दो. सो while claiming or while doing any kind of advertisement, the command over your language, the command over your claims has to be so, कब कौन सा compliance non compliance बन जाता है, you don't know actually. These are the very tricky things. You cannot even make a checklist of all those things, what I used to, because see, whenever we do any kind of, like, if we are opening a new shop or new store, right? Generally what we used to do, सब अपने एक चेकलिस्ट बना लेते हैं compliances के, उसके बाद भी there are many things जो नहीं रहता, छूट जाते हैं अपने से. This is one of the reason, because there are around 60,000 odd number of compliances, right? You can't remember. You are operating and being an FMCG का सबसे बड़ा issues का dynamics का है, geographies का है. We are operating in such a great and spread geography it is next to impossible for us to maintain the compliances of all those geographies. We always try to comply around 80-85%. We always keep our target as 80% we are compliant, then also it is good, because we don't know which is the high risk item, which is the low risk item, which is the medium risk item, right? So these are the challenges we always face on a day-to-day life. That is one of the things that we can say. We are opening a new plant in new area. Suppose in new location. Now we are planning to open up, but usme kya compliances we don't know most of the times. We think that the compliances that we are following in particular plant, like for an Assam, the same compliances will be there in Gujarat also, but that is right. So these challenges in terms, specifically in terms of manufacturing plants in FMCG company, is very wide. Not only the legal compliances, secretarial compliances, labor laws, any compliance you say, everything is included in FMCG sector. ऐसा कोई compliance नहीं है जो FMCG में नहीं है. Basically the companies who are present in omni channel business, right? वो offline stores में भी है, online stores में भी है, institutions में भी है. You don't know आप क्या claim कर रहे हो. MRP अगर किसी को गलत दे दिए by chance institution में, just in order to capture किया यार ये धंधा कर लेते हैं, वो गलत है. Maximum retail price से ज्यादा होना नहीं चाहिए. How are you maintaining the other parameters? So huge lot of challenges. And see the importance of compliances, even I got to know when I used to become a director of one company. जब मेरे को इमामी ने 3 साल बाद ना एक कंपनी का डायरेक्टर बनाने गया ना, तो then I got shaken up. No, if I want to become a director of a company, any compliance something has to check, otherwise there is a highest penalty of imprisonment also in some of the compliances, right? So जब खुद पे बीतती है, अपने बोलते हैं ना हिंदी में, जब आप पे खुद पे बीतती है तब आपको पता चलता है. So those are the things compliance actually takes care of. When it actually आप पे जब आता है compliances का pressure, and when you realize that, then only you get accustomed to that. So it is a blood for an organization. Blood flow रुकना नहीं चाहिए. Similarly, the compliances are like that only. For me, bit of an organization. It cannot be that आपका heartbeat बंद हो गया ना तो आप मर जाते हो, correct? So if compliances are not met, the organization will not suffer. It will be closed. The business will be closed. So it is that much important for any of the compliances to be met. But yes, to be very honest, if anyone can claim that we are 100% compliant, is a myth. 100% compliance is actually a myth, especially in India, because most of the people, I'm a company secretary by profession as well, right? But I don't know यार, जब मैंने CS किया था 2009 में, तब मैंने जो सेबी पढ़ा था और कंपनीज एक्ट पढ़ा था, और जब मैं कंप्लायंस करने आया तो पूरा चेंज ही हो गया, पूरा लॉ ही चेंज हो गया. So you don't know if you can't, and even you cannot update yourself every day. It is very difficult to update yourself every day. So these are the challenges which is there कि आप कैसे मेंटेन करोगे. सो हैट्स ऑफ ऑल टू ऑल द कंप्लायंस मैनेजर्स, टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, हु डज ऑल दिस स्टफ्स ऑन विच हम लोग रात को सो पाते हैं. एट अ सीनियर लेवल, द कंपनी, द डायरेक्टर, all the chief executives can have a peaceful sleep only when their compliance officer is very productive and efficient, right? उनके भरोसे ही कंपनी चलती है, to be very honest, as far as me is concerned. Now I am also taking care of the chief executive position as like for a finance head position. So I have many things to do. So many times I can't give so much of time in terms of compliances. I need to rely on the people, right? So point यही है, how, what is the future for compliances, how it can be streamlined, क्या ऐसा चीज आएगा जिससे इसको streamline कर पाए, लाइफ इजी हो पाए, compliance officer की लाइफ इजी हो पाए, overall company की लाइफ इजी हो पाए. That is something to look after. So this is a question mark to all of us, right? How we can streamline the entire compliances so that we can have an understanding of all the updates on time, to have correction ki agar kuch galat kar rahe hain to there has to be someone who can tell us that you are at wrong path. So these are the challenges and question marks right now also in my mind ki iska answer kya hai, to be very honest. So all these things are compliances is something which we can talk about every day, which we can talk about throughout the day also, but keep taking care of the short time that we all have. So this is something which I want to highlight, that this is not a 1 month job, this is a regular job, or this is a day-to-day job, and it is not a one person job. It is something which has to be inculcated in everyone in the organization. People has to understand the importance, and it has to be on the top of the priority rather than on the bottom side of the priority.
So Nitesh, very well said. I would want to add a couple of points here. You mentioned the downside or the liability of non-compliance, right? For our audience, a couple of numbers here. While India has 69,233 compliances, I don't know if you know, 26,134 among them have provision for jail term. At least 17,000 17,000 among them are from the labor laws, and the remaining 9,000 are from the others. There are criminal penalties for technical lapses, procedural lapses. Small lapses sometimes give enough power to the inspector to put an entrepreneur behind bar. So the chalta hai, hota hai, dekh lenge, manage kar lenge, it doesn't work anymore. If you're genuinely running a world-class company, or if you have an ambition to go beyond a micro or a small-scale enterprise, and you have an ambition to become multi-locational, multi-entity, potentially listed one day, compliance needs to be taken more seriously than it is in some of the organizations. That's part one. Second, as you geographically spread your wings and go from one state to many states, the number of compliances simply skyrocket. And many researches that we have put together, many reports that we have published clearly show that there is a huge difference between a micro, small, and a large or a medium-sized organization purely in complexity of compliance. For a small company, single entity, single location, single plant, single state, you're probably dealing with 3 digits in number of compliance. You go to 2, 3, 4 states, have plants and stuff like that. And if you are lucky, like Anil ji is, manufacturing alcohol beverages, then, you know, God save you, you're dealing with 4 digits, higher 4 digits in some cases, and a lot more penal provisions for jail term. So clearly, compliance management is non-trivial. Hope is not a strategy. If you're thinking कि हो जाएगा, देख लेंगे, manage कर लेंगे, देश बदल गया है और हमें भी बदलने की जरूरत है. Rajiv, I know it's 3:27 and you have to jump off. Any last minute comment before you leave the conversation today?
Just want to add to Mr. Anilji and Mr. Nitesh Patwari. See, to grow from a partnership firm to private limited and then go for public, it's a long process. It's a transformation. So I would like to break into 3 or 4 points. The subject of our webinar is transformation of compliance management. So through digitalization. So transformation is I would say from firm to a listed company is a very tedious process, and for that you have to ensure that compliances are in place, and compliance management is also a very critical aspect as well. Say, since we are a multi-dimensional company diversified into various business, and we have our joint venture in India to take care their part as well. So for me as a company secretary and compliance officer, and to ensure that each unit, each department is taking care of their internal control, their systems, rules and procedures are there, SOPs are there. We have to have such system that everything comes at a fingertip. Like this is the compliance, then you have to ensure that the due date is met, and please place the documents in order and ensure that everything is in place. We can update the management from the MIS department, and I'll also from my side to the board of directors that everything is in place. We have compliant to the rules and regulations to the maximum extent possible. So we have to have such system that rules and amendments and everything is in place. We have to ensure that being a company secretary, like Nitesh Patwari said, that we should have a peace of mind, you know. So I'm in completely agreement with you that what can be done that we as a company secretary and compliance officer can have a peaceful night. That is the main. Over to you, Rishi.
Excellent. Well, we have come to the halfway mark of our discussion. 2 things. Audience, thank you for being there. Wonderful audience. There is a Q&A session and section. I do request you to write your questions there, and we will have Nitesh or Anil ji respond to them. The second part is we would like to engage you in getting your views on a survey. I am going to request our technical team to flash the survey if you can take a minute. and respond to those questions, that would be wonderful. So I'm sure you can actually see the questions on your screen. I would request Nitesh and Anil ji also to respond to the questions, if you can. All right, so we will move on to the next part of our discussion today. So Anil ji, Nitesh, let us go back to where we were. We all agree that compliance management is complex. There are way too many of them. It's a fluid regulatory environment. We heard Nitesh talk about the fact that when he graduated, there were one set of regulations, and when he actually started practicing, the regulations changed. Believe it or not, Nitesh, there are 4,000 plus regulatory changes in a year which affect entrepreneurs. We did a research some time ago, and we realized that for a small pharma company, an MSME-based pharma company, there are about 500 to 600 changes in a given year that they deal with. Now, Anilji, let me first bring you into the conversation, right? Alco beverage space is a very attractive space in India. The number of users of your products are likely to swell to 400 million in this decade. The industry contributes about 1.5 million formal jobs. 70% of your users are in the middle income groups, right? Even during the lockdowns, the industry continued to see attractive growth. But the compliance management is complex. What are your suggestions? How should our audience today deal with it? What are the best practices that you've seen? What role does technology have to play, if any? And where should this journey actually begin?
Yeah. So thank you very much. As you rightly said, the growth and the momentum in the alcohol space is quite promising. And the three waves of COVID has not in a major fashion impacted the overall scope of our consumption across. I mean, people found different avenues of consumption, if not in the bars and restaurants, than at home. So the overall compliances then moved away from the market to home. And even the Zomatos and Swiggies of the world and various other e-commerce activities started mushrooming in the West Bengal, Maharashtra, and Delhi areas, where people wanted to have orders, online somehow, or call up the stores which are actually closed or semi-closed to deliver their products in the home. Now, the compliance obviously was sleeping on this because, as you understand clearly, that the age-old decorum of having political intervention in setting up a brewery or a store or getting a license was difficult anyway in last 2 or 3 decades. But also consumption and the regulation on consumption by legal drinking age was also a challenge. Now, since the COVID waves have actually set in 3 forms of wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, the consumption was rearing to go. And people still wanted to have consumption at home because they wanted to enjoy, though responsibly. And also the consumption pattern changed from now people wanted to have at 18 or 21 years of age for a different state based on the legal drinking age spectrum. Now, the e-commerce activities which actually started and mushroomed over this period had to actually shut down because they were not aware of the fact that how you're going to take a proof of a consumer who is buying and getting it delivered at home, right? Now, even though West Bengal government and Maharashtra government and Delhi government gave a leeway that e-commerce can be done on the existing platform of Zomatos and Swiggies, and few of the other platforms which actually, Dunzo, which came into the play to deliver your stock at home. However, it was very difficult to do a 2-way or 3-way match in terms of their aging bracket, whether they really fall in the legal drinking age or not. And that actually became a challenge, which actually pushed back the e-commerce activity by miles. And now again, the organizations have to comply with and come back to ways where the consumer's proof at a geotagging level can be touched upon, where whenever he orders or she orders, they have to upload a proof of their photograph and their thumb impression or their PAN number or Aadhaar card number giving an age proof. And when it is getting delivered at their home, the similar photograph or an emblem which has been put across has to match. So it was ignorance, definitely, that people wanted to catch on to and capitalize on the not so regulated ways of supplying to the home or to a location where they want to consume with friends and kith and kins. But again, it caught up. So when I say regulation in 30 states, mean we are operating in 30 countries, in fact. That means each state has put up regulation on their GST, which is a SGST. It has put a very clear constraint on our VAT because LKB space still has to fall into the constitutional bill of VAT, and VAT has not gone away from LKB, and we don't fall into the bracket of GST. So therefore, we had to comply with each of the state VAT Act, and that has actually got various filings and compliances in a state to manage supplies of our product back to the retail or back to a corporation market or back to a distributor or wholesale before it reaches the consumer. And also, if I look at the complexity of the business as well, the COVID has left the business in a very thin margin because of our global supply chain upheaval, which has happened not just because of Russia-Ukraine war, but also because of our economic constraint on logistics cost and petrol and diesel price hikes. The challenges have actually become more immense, strangulating and nosediving on the EBITDA and gross margin growth. So while these are contracting and top line is growing, it has become difficult for the suppliers or manufacturers to manage their fixed cost absorption in the variable cost margin which they are earning. And therefore, any reputational loss which happens in regulatory environment in a state actually further erodes the likely generation of money till the EBITDA margin and net margin level. So obviously, out of sight, out of mind when people don't really see it, but when it comes and enforcement directorate is knocking at your door to ask about your non-compliances and you have to pay compounding fee or a hefty penalty, it actually is eroding your 5-year to 10-year strategic plan of long-term plan to make your EBITDA positive. And you say that, hey, I'm going to make it positive next year or next year. And then you find that CCI guys, Competition Commission of India, is knocking at the door of some of the alcohol industry players to impose a penalty of 700 crore rupees, where their revenue is only 5,000 crore rupees, right? So for next 5 to 7 years of their EBITDA losses have been eroded already by a penalty which has been in. So, it's very easy to say that we will do it when it comes. It's going to be going away very soon when we say that it has come on our doorstep. Guys, which were set up in the last 100 years or 150 years plus. So definitely a big challenge and complication in the regulatory environment. Therefore, the more you become complex in the FMCG space or regulatory space, it is extremely important and mandatory for us to track it with technology. So because technology is something which has come at our hem of the affairs in each of the businesses to help us track our compliances, which are plethora of ones. I mean, we are not able to manually track it. And also because we do not have information in a triggered fashion in our emails or in our portals and handsets, where people have become very savvy in terms of mobility networks and apps and portals. They don't really see on their manual registers that what kind of compliances are going to haunt them. Rather, it is better to get a trigger well ahead of time so that we wake up much before any enforcement director or a penalty comes on our door in form of a love letter, as Nitesh said very clearly.
So, Anil, very well said. I couldn't agree more that technology is going to play an important role in helping organizations stay on the right side of the law, unless genuinely someone doesn't want to do so. World is changing. In our personal lives, the Ubers, the Olas, the Zomatos, the Swiggis, the Make My Trips, the Book My Shows, the Clear Trips, they're transforming our lives, right? Every day. They made things simpler. They brought information on our fingertips. Our ability to avail of services has changed dramatically. However, in corporate life, we still think ad hoc, paper-based, people-dependent, manual ways are going to work. Now, they worked when you were small, but the moment you become large, you're waiting for a disaster to happen if you're not going digital. So I definitely think digitization is going to play an important role in breaking the information asymmetry, making sure the right people know about the compliance obligations at the right time, their statuses, whether things are getting done or not, what is the residual risk, where they are stuck, why they are stuck, and make appropriate interactions, interventions, and actions before it is too late, right? You mentioned that if the industry's revenue is 5,000 crores and there's a 700 crore rupees in penalty, there's no way businesses are going to survive. And if there are ways to actually stay on the right side of the law and avoid them, it actually gives you a competitive advantage, right? So the second thing important here is, unfortunately, compliance management does not increase your revenue. And that's a perception that most people, which Anilji had just busted, that yeah, it may not contribute to the revenue, but it can certainly contribute to escalated costs. So either way you look at it, staying on the right side helps. Nitesh, let me bring you into the conversation. You know, you come from FMCG as an industry. There are 96 lakh or 9.6 million retailers in FMCG across the country, 21,000 different FMCG manufacturers, over 250,000 SKUs in the country, a completely recession-proof industry. In fact, the FMCG consumption went up when everybody was working from home, continues to attract a lot of FDI. It is said that on an average, over $1 billion in FDI came into your industry. Industry is supposed to grow at a massive rate, and growth basically is good. Growth also means escalating compliance obligation. What would you like to advise to our audience? What should they do differently? How should they perceive this? What best practices have you seen with Lure?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. See, I would start the learning that we got from the COVID, which we can actually relate to other compliances also, right? How the worlds are evolving, how we are evolving into the world, right? So most of the people was not aware about the SpO2 parameter before COVID. अपने कोई चेक नहीं करते थे SpO2 अपना क्या है नहीं है, करेक्ट? So this is the kind of scenario that has been evolved at that time. SpO2 मशीन का प्रोडक्शन बढ़ गया था, right? We were not aware that below 80% we should actually call doctor and get admitted also into the hospital, because that can be disaster at any point of time. Your heartbeat can be stopped at any point of time, right? So now we all know SpO2, and if you see the how the technology is evolving in itself is, now every smartphones and every smartwatches used to have SpO2 now, right? Forget about the SpO2, even now the Apple Watch has come up with the ECG also. So this is the power of technology, and people are adopting that technology in every area. आज के डेट में स्मार्ट वॉच में SpO2 का ऑफर आने लग गया कि उसके बिना, and now the consumers are attracting toward that smartwatches who can take care of the SpO2 also in there, because most of the people become more healthy, health conscious. पहले से आज के डेट में 70% जंप हो गया the healthy food की, because the people, if you see the contribution of the overall population, around 50% of the population is within the age of 35, right? Out of that, 35% population is at the age of below 25. So people at that age wants to become healthy now. And especially after COVID, we all have understood the importance of healthiness. Healthy life, how much important we want to maintain a healthy life is something that we all are aware of now. So the similarly is the kind of compliances that, to be very honest, it is not possible to maintain over Excel sheet. It is not possible to maintain on the mind. Human mind also works in one particular direction. It cannot take a load of every compliances which is getting added on a daily basis. अगर अपने daily basis पे compliance add देखने लग जाएंगे तो every day it is getting changed. Every day new compliances are coming in. We are not even aware of, right? So we need to have someone, जैसे बोलते हैं ना, now it's a time of robotics. People with the engineering background on the coding side are having a huge demand in terms. आज से 3 साल पहले इंजीनियर्स लोग को ना बोला जाता था क्या काम करोगे, memes बनते थे इंजीनियर्स के नाम पे, आज भी बनते हैं, but now the percentage of meme that used to have on the engineers 2 to 3 years back has drastically reduced. Why? Because they have started and gone into the era of coding languages where they are easing the life of the other people, right? Through the coding, they are developing a software, they are developing a program which can ease out the life of a day-to-day function. In the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can nowhere match our human mind with them, right? First, and second, Excel is also have some limitation. उसमें rows and columns की एक limitation है, उसके ऊपर compliances है आज के डेट में, if I actually talk about. So my simple funda is, yeah, we need to have a technology right now, immediately, rather than wait for another 1 or 1.5 years. Because how immense technology can help you when we are not aware of, to be very honest. Technology is something which can give you a real-time data of all the compliances which is applicable to your particular industry, which is applicable to your particular presence. If I talk about now, if I talk about myself, if suppose I am present in 15 different geography, I don't have to look after balanced geographies, to be very honest. But at least I should be aware about that 15 geography. So technology can help you to have update on those geographies. आपके पास आज 15 जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर्स हैं, हर स्टेट में जो जीएसटी है उसका कंप्लायंस कैसे होना है नहीं होना है, those dashboards will be available through technology only. People cannot, macros भी आप बना लो फिर भी possible नहीं होता in terms of compliances, because macro can do the coding for to give you the dashboard, but it cannot give you the update on a daily basis. The live update can only be happen when you can integrate your technology with the government data, correct? That is the only way out in the future to come, because in this is an era in the next 5 to 10 years that we are going to become a 1 trillion economy, to be very honest. 1 trillion economy is a huge lot of number यार. आज ही compliance manage नहीं होते. This 16,000 number of compliances is going to become not less than 2 lakh, at least 2 lakh of compliances, to be very honest. So in terms of growth that we see in terms of volume, in terms of revenue, in the same fashion, the compliances and number of acts are going to increase. There is no doubt on that. And governments are becoming more strict in terms of non-compliances. जो पहले नहीं थी, but now the government, with the new government and with the kind of simple agenda that they have, with the kind of development that they have done in terms of demonetization बोल लीजिए, with everyday improvement of GST बोल लीजिए, it is very difficult for any human being to take care of all the compliances. Even if we arrange a team of 15-20 people for compliances, we are still will be 100 will not be 100% compliant. So the technology is very important. How you can build the technology in such a fashion that it can be customized as per the consumer need, as per the business need, is something which the technology driven company has to offer. That is something, a unique proposition that company has to offer now. There are many softwares, but we need to see which software company can take and which software will actually help them to grow also. So that, yes, definitely technology के बिना नहीं हो सकता. To be very honest, it is impossible to, and you don't know when someone will come and knock your door, right? So if I talk about the listed companies, in case of non-compliance, which get published in the entire forum, share will plunge 20 to 30% in a single day. So in terms of losing, in terms of market cap is very huge. तो मार्केट कैप का अगर आप लॉस देखोगे तो वो एक दिन में बहुत ऊपर नीचे हो सकता है. So this is all about the news which is getting flashed about the company. In order to do the fundraising, as you rightly said, 1 billion का तो खाली FMCG sector में, right? Fundraising का FDI investment, I absolutely agree. But those investments can only come with the proper corporate governance. Without due diligence, आज के रेट में तो कोई पैसा डालता ही नहीं है. So the corporate governance, the EHS policy, environment and health safety policy bolo, corporate governance bolo, it is so much important nowadays. And in many companies I have seen now, the company the company did not have a separate department for E&S policy, E&S department, right? Nowadays companies started creating a department for E&S just to attract the people and the funding house to put the money in their company. So that has become important,
right? It is driven from the board, right? I mean, we have independent directors.
It's a top-down approach. It's a top-down approach.
You have an independent director who's questioning you in the board meeting, saying, "I don't want to just, to whomsoever it may concern, we are compliant with the law of the land is not going to work anymore, right?" They are asking for evidences, right? They're asking for traceability, timeliness, and accountability. So unless you have system-driven approach to compliance management, you will end up just with an anecdotal evidence saying, yeah, compliant. And all you know, licenses have expired. Your people in remote areas have no idea that those have expired. Your testings are not happening on time. You're on the wrong side of the law, and you're gladly thinking, like they say, right? Ignorance is bliss. You're sitting in the corporate and enjoying the fact that we are compliant and we take pride in compliance. But the reality is, on the ground, there's a huge disconnect. So I think...
No, I tell you, Rishi, I share you one of my example. So we are in FMCG company, basically into the personal care segment, right? Where our products are getting applied in the human body, right? So आप most of the before, like for an example, I talk about ourselves as a layman guy. When we go and into any modern trade or any of the store and pick up one of the product, are we aware whether that product has been done through a past study analysis or not? But company has to ensure that whenever their products are going into the market, all the R&D of their products has been done, the past study report is there, the clinical study report is there, everything is there on record for them, so that if anyone in the future goes and answer and claim any kind of claim from them, they should have all the paper to justify their product, right?
Sure.
So as a layman, we are not aware that, but it is a duty of the company to make sure that their product should not harm their consumers.
So Nitesh, in the interest of time, let me bring Anil ji into the yet again. Anil ji, tell us about the impact of digitization on creating a culture of compliance in a company.
Right. So, technology is very close to my heart. I was managing not just a CFO role, but a technology head for APAC, including China, Vietnam, and India, and Australia. And very clearly, we had mandated in my previous experiences a very clear 360-degree management of compliances on a tool, supported by one of our vendors, which was having some, tuppence of blockchain with government authorities, where we can really dovetail and understand that if the regulations and notices are getting released, we get to know straight away if any changes happening in the regulatory environment for a particular excise duty act in a particular state or a pollution control act in a particular state. And we found different challenges because first, our in-house has to be in order. And the moment you start, going backward integration with government authorities, it is better to clean our houses first. And we realized it very clearly. And then we thought that it is better to track our non-compliances or compliances or required compliances through a set of technological intervention by a vendor who have expertise in understanding compliance requirement for a particular industry, for a set of state or a local municipal committee, or for a particular district, because compliances also change like we change our languages. If there are 500 dialects, then there are 1,000 requirements of regulations also in the municipal committees, also a particular state. And therefore, we drove that agenda very clearly, that our digitalization of record management system, our filings, archiving our documents, which can help us for 8 years in terms of referring back by any of the authorities to check our record, whether we filed our returns properly, we did our assessments clearly, are there any open assessments, are there any legal tangles which are being stuck for last 4 years which have not got resolved, are there any labor issues which are pending? And those were becoming really difficult to retract back into the records. And therefore, we realized very soon that our record management and digitization of record extremely important for all the contracts, obligations, and within those contracts, what are the tax implications which can really haunt the business? So it is not just a piece of 4 pages on a 500 rupees stamp paper registered by an authority saying that we have an obligation to pay XYZ to a vendor, but also in terms of in an environment where these obligations are standing in India, which all states are getting impacted for GST or VAT, or which a particular partner or a wholesaler is getting impacted for the reimbursement of spends, which can impact GST waiver or GST implication. And lack of knowledge as it prevails, it was extremely difficult for us, and we found that our technology has to really play a vital role. And just like we have, Facebook, or we have Twitters of the world in our hand, and we can do everybody doing a palmistry these days. Everybody's busy reading through economic times or news and having all the records of their relationships, birthdays, which are more interesting to them more than what the compliance should be. I think this one, compliance, is something which is a Facebook for an organization, where they can see exactly where they are in terms of regulatory compliance is required by each enactment for a state, be it on labor side of business, be it on EHS, secretarial, finance, all those should be on the palm to look at in terms of what are the regulations which are required on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis, and how those dashboards and reports are stating in terms of our filings and documentation which you have done, and which are the ones where we cannot comply, but we can also mitigate our risk by ring fencing and talking to the authorities in terms of, yes, we have these gaps, but we can really fill those gaps in 3 months time to 1 year time. So give us some time. And governments and authorities have become quite lenient, if I could say very clearly, when they are, manufacturing agencies or companies are approaching them to help us in some of the areas. They actually become benevolent and they start helping in that area as well. But again, that help can happen only when we have a record on a click of a button on your monitor, where you are able to get as a senior leader a dashboard reporting where the red herring is very clearly visible, and you can really make and awake anybody who has not complied with that for a particular period of month or a year for a particular act. So very clearly, I could see that as Nitesh is saying, when the startup ecosystem is getting developed, and I could see startups are mushrooming and they are becoming major part of economy in the business. You cannot go for a listed company or IPO until condition precedents or prerequisites are complied with in terms of compliances, and that becomes very clear, mandate for indemnities and condition precedents for investors to put money into your account. And that can only happen when we are aware of how we can really ensure that all information are available in each of the functions for the areas which they are responsible for on a click of button on a monitor, where they can really deep dive in terms of what non-compliances are pending on a periodic basis. So absolutely, it is important.
Anilji, we are about 2 minutes into the end of our program today. There are a few questions. I do want to bring them to our attention. There's a question by Pushpesh. He's quoting one of the quotes that I had mentioned, which is "Chalta hai, hota hai, dekh lenge, manage kar lenge." I think he likes the quote. The question he has is how this perceived conception will change that compliance is not just a cost, and it's more of a commitment to be ethical in all ways, right? So Nitesh or Anilji, whoever wants to take that question.
Yeah, I tell you, actually, there is only one solution to this, which I generally used to follow in my early days. I used to create a group where I used to send a message कि thanks, आज हम लोग को कुछ नहीं हुआ, ये लोग बच गए. So these are the things ना. It creates a humor also, and it creates a sense of responsibility also, right? In the initial days, people will think that this person is creating a humor, joke मार रहा है, बचा रहे हैं, but at certain point of time ना, things will get into a control. They will start realizing that at any point of time, this non-compliance can lead to this kind of penalty and this kind of imprisonment to these people in the organization. That is the only way. That is the only way to create an awareness. Like we tell in the branding business, right? Brand kab pull aata hai? Brand pull tab aata hai when we create awareness about the brand. People get to know about the brand. Then only the brand pull creates, right? People go into the shop and pull your brand in spite of the push strategy, correct? So this pull has to come on from ourselves only. We need to start showing the mirror to the management along with the top senior officials who are at the directorship position also, with the kind of penalty that can come at any point of time because of these non-compliances. And these are the people who can be behind the bar because of these non-compliances. तो जो जेल में जाने वाले हैं ना, वो सबसे पहले बोलेंगे कि भाई ये compliance कर ले. So this is something na, this has to be like I have mentioned in the start also. It is not a one-person job. It is like a blood everyone wants to have in order to run their life, right? एक जन से नहीं होता. It is an organization driven, people driven. Everyone should be on top of it. That is something you can create a dashboard, reflect it on your screen or a TV. Every most of the company used to have one screen, common screen, either in reception or in anywhere. Or you can generate or buy one TV and put it into the screen. क्या आज हमारा achievement क्या हुआ? We generally used to show that, right? कि आज हमारा ये achievement है, ये growth है month on month. There also we should start putting our non-compliances also. So the people entering into the office should see that these are the non-compliance actually the company has done. तो जो people है ना organization में वही बोलेंगे कि पहले सर compliance करो नहीं तो मैं जा रहा हूँ. So in order to be more people oriented, आज के डेट में resource मिलना is very tough. good resource milna is next to impossible. So the organization don't want to lose their good resources, and in order to maintain their good resources and retain their good resources, this can be the strategy. Even resources can start optimizing it. So that is the answer to your question. To be very honest, Deepans, मतलब पुष्पेश सॉरी. सो आई डोंट थिंक यार इससे अच्छा कुछ कर सकते हैं. इट इज समथिंग वी नीड टू स्टार्ट. वही है कि किसी को चालू करना पड़ेगा. इन योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यू कैन बी द वन ऑफ द पर्सन हु कैन स्टार्ट दिस जर्नी. Things will be safe for sure.
Anilji, any views?
No, absolutely. I mean, I could see very clearly a few of the instances where the prosecution notice comes from a government, and obviously a CFO or a legal head gives that notice or mails it to CEO or the chairman or to the board, and then everybody start bouncing back that sir, मैंने तो आपको मेल लिखा था 3 महीने पहले, आपको याद होगा, ये जीरो लिक्विड डिस्चार्ज हमें करना पड़ता है, आपने ध्यान नहीं दिया, मेल पढ़ा नहीं होगा मेरा. And then somebody, the secretary, will start waking up and say that sir, मैंने आपको बोला था CFO साहब, आपने कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया. And then there are so many informal, formal mails and discussion will start piling on because the prosecution notice has been served. And therefore, there has to be some platform or a base where you can record and track that information of non-compliance so formally that the verbatim or the grapevine misses the chance of coming on that platform informally that notice has come, I told you, I told that, so chalta hai, मैंने तो बोला था हो जाएगा, हम सब manage कर लेंगे, अब सब कौन manage करेगा? And everybody then washes their hands off and say that it's only the legal head which has to go and look for a consultant like Tri-Legal or EY or Deloitte legal team to make sure that they speak to the vendor or to the commissioner or to the excise and manage this stuff immediately. So when it comes, the shit hits the floor or to the fan, it depends how and who's going to wipe it out. It's something which need to be avoided at any cost by all means. And at the last one I say, Rishi, is that when somebody says that it doesn't have ROCE or ROI, the compliance portal or the cost of it, I can tell you very clearly that it gives you the best and the highest ROC or ROI in the business because, I've seen even 50 crore rupees to 100 crore rupees of payout pinches everybody because आपके जेब में से 5 रुपए का कॉइन भी अगर नीचे गिर जाता है फर्श के ऊपर, आप कैसे उठा के लपक के उठा लेते हो, राइट? वो आपके लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. लेकिन जब बिजनेस का किसी का बिजनेस है, स्टार्टअप है और आपका 50 या 40 करोड़ रुपए देना पड़ता है जिसका टर्नओवर ही 100 करोड़ रुपए का है या 200 करोड़ रुपए का है, तो उसकी कैसे हालत होती होगी नॉन कंप्लायंस में, हमें खुद मालूम होता है. So I think it is extremely sensitive subject and people need to be responsible in this area, that accountability doesn't rest on only one person or two people in the organization. Everybody is a bookkeeper, everybody is a compliance manager in itself, smaller or bigger. Although accountability rests in the chairman and the board of directors, but we need to make sure that everybody is responsible and puts their tuppence or contribution to this compliance parameters in the business in the times to come.
Sure. Just in the interest of time, one more question is there. Since government is reducing the burden of compliances, especially with the labor codes, do companies need to invest in the technology program? I mean, I can answer that question. If accounting is becoming simpler or taxation is becoming simpler, should we go for Tally or ERP or should continue to do accounting with Bahi Khata? I mean, that's not a excuse for not going digital. Digitization has far more benefits than what we've discussed here. Efficiency, productivity, transparency, accountability, lower cost, more control, greater governance. I mean, I can go on with this list for another half an hour. There are many, many benefits. And just because compliance burden is coming down is not a excuse for not, deploying technology. There are yet a couple of questions focused around how do you sell a compliance management software with 100% compliance? There's no concept of 100% compliance. Not all compliances are equal. Some are critical compliance, some are low risk compliances. So an organization needs to do a good job of reasonable controls and compliance management to stay on the right side of the law. So I think the focus is not on 100%. Don't get stuck on that word. The focus is on compliance with law of the land in form, in sense, in spirit, and so on and so forth. We heard some examples where the regulatory authorities become facilitators when they realize that this company is not intentionally non-compliant. They've been compliant for most part, minor non-compliance here and there. They take a different view of such organizations than actually defaulters. So we are 7 minutes over. I would want to close it in the interest of time. Let me take this opportunity and thank Nitesh and Anilji. Wonderful discussion, lot of wonderful examples coming from your past and history. I'm sure our audience has taken some serious notes as a result of this discussion. Reach out to us, audience, in case we can facilitate a further dialogue on the same topic. Our speakers will be happy to take them even offline. So thank you for being a wonderful audience. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great day ahead of you.
Thank you very much, audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rishi, and audience, for patience and listening to us carefully. Thank you very much. So nice of you. Have a nice time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.